Hey y'all, what is up? It's been a little while since I've done a car chat, but I'm on my way to work, and so I figured I'd take this opportunity to just chat a little bit. So what I wanted to talk about today, I don't know, I'm sure it might get some people upset. I don't know, like when it comes to speaking on certain topics or like certain communities, I try just not to, because I don't know, somebody's always bound to get a little ticked off or offended. But I wanted to talk about the sexualization of children and why this is becoming more and more allowable. Well, I guess me wondering why it's becoming more allowable. So, you know, I think as parents, for those of us that are parents, you know, regardless of what like sexual orientation our children end up being, I think we try to not like introduce them to like sexual type of topics or conversations, or we try to allow them to stay children as long as possible, okay, and to not push onto them like the topics of like dating and relationships, and allowing kids to be kids, not having them worrying about like boys and girls and, you know, whatever. But for some reason, it feels like when it comes to the now LGBTQ plus kids, this seems to be so much more allowed, or it's almost like celebrated, and I just wonder why. Now, as I've said in previous videos where I've kind of talked about them, I really have no issues with the LGBTQ plus community. Like, I really don't. To me, I think most of them, they just try to mind their business and live their lives, you know what I mean? That's it. But I do have to sometimes question some of the so-called activists that kind of speak on their behalf, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that pretty much end up being the face of their community. And, you know, it's not always the best look. But, you know, apart from them though, I do sometimes wonder though why, like, among the masses, sometimes these kind of things are celebrated. Because if we're not promoting or celebrating quote-unquote heterosexual kids, you know, talking about their sexual orientation, who they're attracted to and all that stuff, why are we celebrating it when a so-called gay kid does it? Or like these children, young children that are now coming out as trans, like, why are we celebrating this? Now, you know, as a parent in that situation, I can only imagine how that feels, because you want to be as supportive as possible for your kid, and you don't want to further add on to whatever confusion they're feeling. But I feel like some parents are actually adding on to the confusion, and if anything, they're deciding for their kids. And I don't understand, first of all, why anyone would think that a young child has the mental or emotional capacity to make that type of decision and to decide that they now identify as the opposite gender and they want to make that transition. Now, granted, I know that there are some trans people out there that have said that they kind of knew pretty early on. But as far as like the actual process of transitioning, like, why are people okay with young kids doing this? Like, I don't understand. Or not just that, but I feel like as a parent, allowing your kid to identify as trans, I feel like in a way you're sexualizing them. I don't know. I feel like when you allow your kid from a very young age to identify as trans, or to even identify as gay or whatever, it's like in a way you are sexualizing them, because you're now implying what or who they are sexually attracted to. And I feel like people also aren't making the distinction, or especially kids, they may not know how to make the distinction between maybe being a slightly more feminine type of a boy or man, you know, whatever, whatever, and they automatically assume, oh, now I'm gay, when that may not necessarily be the case. It's just like girls that are tomboys and that are more masculine, quote unquote, does that now mean that they lesbian? No. And I feel like people aren't taking that into account as well. You know, like a week or two ago, I saw a clip of Buttigieg or whatever his name is, who I guess he's not running anymore for president, but like he was having some type of thing, and this 9-year-old kid came up and was like, you know, I want to be brave like you and let the world know that I'm gay, type of thing. Kid was 9, and everybody in the room was like chanting, you know, love is love or whatever. But again, I'm just like, the kid is 9. Why are y'all celebrating and applauding this young kid saying that he's gay? Like, I don't, like, how does he know that he's gay? And I think that's another thing of it. Like, I know hormones can kind of hit kids at different ages and, you know, whatever. But I feel like as a kid, how do you even know what the hell you like? How do you know what you're sexually attracted to? You haven't even hit puberty yet. You know, and that's what kills me too. Like, when you have these young kids that have not hit puberty, their hormones have not really started to like run wild yet, and they're already deciding what they identify as and what they're potentially going to like in the future. It's like with Dwayne Wade and his son, now daughter, like she is what, 12 or something like that. Like, how does this kid know what they're gonna like later on in life? How do they know that they want to live this way for the rest of their life? I guess that's what I don't understand. Which brings me onto the topic of self-identification. Now, within the past few months or so, I have started watching a few trans women YouTubers, because I'm curious. Like, I was curious about, like, I don't know, what is it that they really think? And one thing that I've noticed is that the LGBTQ plus community is becoming quite political. I think most people assume that, you know, all of them are just a bunch of left-leaning SJW type of people, but I'm realizing that's actually not the case. You actually have right-wing, conservative, you know, trans people or gay people or whatever it is. Like, your orientation doesn't necessarily dictate your political ideology. But even within their community, it seems like some of the ideologies do somewhat align with either this or that end of the political spectrum. So one of the things that I have noticed some of these, you know, trans YouTubers talking about is like the whole topic of self-ID, self-identifying, where it's becoming to the point where if somebody says, oh, I'm this now, you have to listen to them and you can't question it, okay? Which really makes me side-eye some of these people, especially some of these men, okay? Particularly certain men in sports that all of a sudden come out as trans women, and now they're allowed to compete alongside biological women, and they basically dominate them in the sports. Like, I really side-eye those people because they haven't well, some of them haven't gone through any type of actual like medical transitioning. They're not trying to pass as women, but now because you say that you're a woman, now because you have self-identified as women, nobody can question it, and now we gotta let you play with a biological woman? Like, what? Stuff like that, I do side-eye. But, you know, it just makes me question, like, what are there, like, certain measures put in place? Like, what is the, how can we determine when someone's self-identifying themselves as, you know, another gender, whatever, is, I don't want to say accurate, but I don't know how else to put it. And, you know, when it comes to like trans people specifically, I notice that there is kind of a divide between those that think that being trans is more of like a medical condition versus others that don't, and they feel that the ones that do promote the medical trans stuff are like bigots and stuff. I don't know, it's like a whole mess. But I do wonder myself, because, you know, to me it makes sense that if you're a trans person, you know, it's like been documented, you've been diagnosed with having gender dysphoria and all that. I would assume that you've at least receive some type of counseling or something, you know, especially if you're young. But some of these people don't, or they're not even trying to live their lives passing as the opposite gender. So it just makes me wonder, what's your real motive, you know? So anyway, I feel like I'm kind of all over the place, but it's just, I don't know. The direction in which society is heading really makes me question. And, you know, I feel like people within the LGBTQ plus community, like I've said it before, like I really feel that they should be allowed to live their lives however the hell they want. Like I really I have no issue with that. But when it comes to a point where it's now like being pushed or celebrated among young children, that is when I have a problem. Okay? Or where we're now allowing children to make these type of decisions for themselves. That is where I have a problem, because I feel like as a parent, you know, half the time we're deciding what our kids wear, we're deciding what they eat, we're deciding where they can and can't go, okay? Like, we basically make all of the major decisions in their lives for them. So what the hell makes some people think that these young ass kids can now decide their gender, or decide that they want to identify as the opposite? Like, I don't understand, y'all. I don't understand. And, you know, I don't know if me expressing myself this way is going to make some people upset, but I don't get it, you guys. And I know there are a few of you out there that are members of this community, so please give your opinion. Y'all know I'm not trying to hate on nobody, and I try not to be offensive when I speak on these type of things, because I'm really not trying to be offensive. But I do know that there are some people, even within the LGBTQ plus community, that are like, nah, I don't ride with these people, I don't agree with these ideologies. There are some trans people that feel like you shouldn't be transitioning as a young kid. So I know not everyone agrees with what some of these people or activists that are in the forefront say. Okay, like I know not all of them are the same, and I don't like to generalize any group, but it's just becoming crazy. And I do feel like people or the young kids are gonna become more and more confused. And at this point, we just have to, be ready to answer some of the questions that our kids may have, because at the end of the day, they're being introduced to this type of stuff at a younger and younger age. So I just feel that as a society in general, I think we want what is best for our kids. We want what is best for the kids and, just a society in general. But I feel like in order to do that, we have to treat things carefully. And I feel like we shouldn't be rushing into things. Or just because this 5-year-old kid says, or a 5-year-old boy says, oh, I'm a girl now, and now we're just going to take their word for it. No, okay? Like, I don't know why some of these things are being rushed. So I just feel like we have to, take things with precaution and just seek as much guidance and counseling or whatever as possible, especially if they are approaching, like, their preteen, teenage age or whatever. Because you don't want your child, if they are confused about their sexuality or their gender or whatever, or your teenager, you don't want them growing up continually feeling confused or feeling like nobody supports them. So I think, we should do whatever we can to support them and to help them in making that decision. But I just feel like that should be done at a slightly older age, not when they're in friggin' elementary school, barely even middle school. I would say maybe in high school you can really start exploring those other options and stuff. But just don't force it, don't push it onto these young kids, because they're still babies, half of them, like, I don't know. I think be supportive, but don't make decisions for your kids. Anyway, before I keep saying more stuff and get myself in trouble, that was it for this video. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll check you guys later. Bye.